Hello, everyone. It's your boy DKB here. We are live today. I have an esteemed guest, Connor Long. You're going to see him on Jets X Factor these days, but he also has his own channel, New York Flight Jets Talk. And I've spotted you for a little bit, my man. I'll be honest, there's a ton of us that's trying to jump into this side of business and get our thoughts out there about the team. But to start things off, I do always love a good origin story. So tell us a little bit about how you somehow fell into being a Jets fan, because it's not for the weak-hearted. And what's your story?
Well, first, DKB, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. But in terms of my origin Jet story, I was born into it. My dad was a Jet fan, but I had the option, 2019, I believe it was, to get out of the fan base. Jets against the Raiders. I think the Jets were 0-13. They hadn't won a game or something. Greg Williams calls an all-out blitz. The Jets give up a Hail Mary to Henry Ruggs to lose the game. Greg Williams gets fired the next day. My dad turns to me. He goes, it's gonna be a long ride if you want to be a Jet fan. A lot of losing. So you have a choice. You can either stick with the Jets or you could choose a team, but once you choose that team, you got to stick with them forever. So I'm like, all right, Dad, I'll sleep on that. I wake up the next morning, I go, I'm riding with the Jets. Since then, I've been a diehard. So that's my origin story. And then these last 2 years, I've really, really gotten into it. I started calling into a bunch of Jet shows, and then right before the week, I think the day after Christmas is when I put my first video out. I started my Jets channel, and I'm like, all right, I've always, sports broadcasting has been something I've always been interested in, but I started the channel, and I've loved it ever since. And recently, I just got a job writing for Jet X Factor. So, the Jets content community, though, is just a great place, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, 100%. When I seen you, I think I reached out sometime last week, right? And it's because I seen you officially on Jets X Factor. Otherwise, I figured we would have linked up at some point through like Gunny or somebody. But yeah, it's awesome seeing a fan so young, especially doing this particular podcasting piece of it, because it's a pretty on the spectrum of Jets fandom. It's like all the older guys that were around when Joe Namath was winning the Super Bowl, and then you have like Jet Central and Green Bean and some of those guys in that middle tier. But I almost never hear from any of the young guys that are coming up here. So with your I don't want to say minimal experience, but with your time actually paying attention to the team, right, and kind of fully investing yourself into it, what has it been like for you so far when it comes to like, chatting about your team with your friends or anything like that from the Jets, from your perspective?
So out of all my friends, really, I'm the biggest football fan by far. So I like talking with you guys, people that are kind of some knowledgeable, way more knowledgeable than me, and around my knowledge. I think it's so fun chopping it up with people like this. But the experience. What was the question again?
Yeah. What's your experience like being able to chat about Jets football? And, if it's not with your friends, if they're not as big as football fans, definitely within the community.
Oh, it's awesome talking with you guys, like you mentioned yourself, Gunny, Jake Asman, Matt O'Leary, all these content guys. I mean, it's just so much fun being able to chop it up and have debates with these guys, and high leverage conversations. Also, getting to speak to some analysts, some former players. I've had Mike Tannenbaum, Rich Samini, Wesley Walker, Marty Lyons. I've had a bunch of these guys on my show, so it's been really fun. Just getting to talk with, like I said, Marty Lyons and Wesley Walker are just NFL legends. So it's really cool to be able to talk to those guys and analysts. I love talking about sports. I mean, to me, there's nothing better than that.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely one of the things that drove me to try to jump into this myself. And it's been really impressive. By the way, for anybody that isn't familiar with this channel, I do have the link in the comments. Again, you're going to start seeing some content from him, from Jets X Factor and that whole community. But I do get very impressed when I've seen some of your videos about your knowledge of the team, obviously the sport in general. A lot of the younger generation, I would just assume, is just now kind of, learning about a sport, right? And you can actually run through a list of roster names, events, times, dates, all of these things. So diving into what's been happening this offseason, what's kind of been your takeaways from OTAs and mandatory minicamp?
DK, I think the Jets have had an incredible offseason. I mean, every addition they made, there was not an addition the Jets made in free agent, other than letting Bryce Huff walk, which really, I think, hurt the Jets. There was not an addition in free agency that Joe Douglas made where I'm like, okay, this is going to hurt the team. Maybe we did overpay Kinlaw a little. Maybe, they could have gotten a better run stopper than Lakai too. But overall, I think the Jets had a very solid offseason. I thought OTAs in minicamp, I mean, other than I think Reddick is the main focus right now for the Jets fan base. I mean, the whole Aaron Rodgers thing's a complete joke. He was at 7 out of the 10 OTAs, and he already told the Jets months in advance that he was going to miss these 2 days of mandatory minicamp. People are refusing, especially NFL national media, they're refusing to recognize that he alerted the Jets he wouldn't be there, and he was at 7 out of the 10 OTAs. And I think Rich Cimini of ESPN said he only missed 38 reps during those 2 days of practice. He received way more than 38 reps and 7 out of the 10 OTAs. But right now, I think Reddick is the main concern. Just given how are they going to get it done? I do think he plays. I don't even know if it's an extension. I think they just guarantee some money on his current contract, and that's how he plays. But yeah, ESPN gave the Jets a B+ overall for the offseason. They said the best move was signing Tyron Smith, which, I think Tyron Smith is going to be the anchor of this offensive line. And the fact they drafted Olaf Fashanu, who I thought was an incredible pick. I mean, you get to learn from a future Hall of Famer, Tyron Smith. I mean, it doesn't get any better. I think this Jets O-line is going to be really solid this year. They said the worst move, though, was keeping Nathaniel Hackett. And, I don't disagree with that. But Jake Asman on his show made an incredible point. He said that might be the worst move of the offseason. But that just goes to show how good of an offseason the Jets had. If ESPN's saying the worst move the Jets made was keeping an offensive coordinator that Aaron Rodgers has won 2 MVPs with. So I think overall, though, the Jets have had a great offseason, and I'm looking forward to the season, man. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of the things that when I try to think back on some of the most exciting moments for me leading into a regular season, this has by far been our best offseason from a contract perspective, bringing in the talent. It hasn't just been one of those off seasons for us where, we got a Hall of Famer, a perennial All-Pro, but they're clearly on the downside of their career. You're getting guys that are coming off seasons that they clearly are still among the best of their peers. When I think about a lot of us, though, that we all, as fans in general, we tend to be, biased, of course. I think we're more knowledgeable than most of the other fan bases out there, right? We dive into the draft classes earlier. We're out there basically with the pro NFL scouts for who's going to be free agent signings. Is there particular focus that you look forward to when it comes to something like free agency, the draft, undrafted free agents versus the actual draft class, guys that you just look to improve on the roster? What's kind of your bread and butter that you really look forward to seeing news on?
I really look forward to seeing the improved offensive line this year with all these new starters coming in. I really look forward to seeing that. And there's some undrafted free agents. I want to see what Eric Watts can do on the defensive line. I want to see what Leonard Taylor could do. I know you had a series going for a good amount of time on your channel where every day you'd pick an undrafted free agent and you kind of broke down who not their tape, but broke down all their statistical categories and stuff and how you thought they'd fit in with the Jets. I do think there are some position rooms, though, still on the Jets that they could use improvement in. I don't think the Jets will do this, but I think Justin Simmons is a name out there that I think the Jets should look to target. He might be really expensive, but I don't look at a Super Bowl caliber roster and say, okay, Chuck Clark and Tony Adams are the starting safeties. Chuck Clark's 28 years old, I believe he is, coming off of a torn Achilles. We haven't seen him play in over a year. What can he do? I don't know. Tony Adams was very inconsistent last season. I'm not going to say he had a bad year because he did have that great interception against the Eagles, but he was very inconsistent. Then after that, Ashton Davis, we haven't seen him take on a role. And then JBC, Jarek Bernard Converse, we haven't even really seen him play in the NFL. So safety, I definitely think we can upgrade, and running back, after Braylon Allen and, well, really after Breece Hall, if you think about it, the remaining spots are question marks. I think Braylon Allen will be the RB2, but after that, Braylon Allen, we haven't seen play in the NFL. Isaiah Davis, we have not seen play in the NFL. Tariq Cohen has not appeared in an NFL game since week 3 of the 2021 season. And Izzy Abandokonda in his minimal reps, we don't know what to expect out of him. So overall, though, I'm really looking forward to see the improved offense and the stellar defense this year.
Yeah, those are probably some of the best points I've heard when people have mentioned some of the weaker positions, right? Honestly speaking, when you put it in perspective, the safety group realistically has one starter, which is Tony Adams, as you mentioned, kind of up and down play. And basically the last 2 years, Ashton Davis has been a career backup, core special teamer, backup role player. Chuck Clark coming off of his major injury. How do you look at some of these positions, and then how much is the changed offensive coaching staff kind of impacting what you feel about that roster position, right? So when I look at safety, I think there's obviously huge upgrades. A lot of people mentioned Justin Simmons. I like Quandre Diggs myself as another potential addition, especially with some existing chemistry there when you look at a guy like DJ Reed on the roster. But Tony Dews comes in the running back room, right? You have Tony Oden, obviously, over there in the secondary position group. How do you feel about this offensive staff and even defensively when it comes to evaluating our roster and projecting some of these guys that haven't actually had a ton of NFL experience?
I look at the offensive coaching staff, and it's really Nathaniel Hackett. I see who's running that offense. They have these positional coaches like that. Todd Downing, I think, is the new quarterback coach after they let Rob Calabrese go. I look at those, but those positions are what I'd call negligible. I really think it's the offensive coordinator and the head coach who's really running that offense. But They did add Tony Dews. They did add Sean Jefferson as their wide receiver coach. I really think the offense, though, I've said it all along, they just need to play average football. Average football with a top 3, top 5 defense, and the Jets could really go a long way. In regards to the defensive coaching staff, I love it. I think the Jets were very lucky to keep Marquis Manuel, the safeties coach. I think they were very lucky to re-sign Aaron Whitecotton, the defensive line coach, and then Coach Olbrich is Coach Olbrich. I mean, he's just, oh, God, I think one of the best defensive minds in the league, and I really think it's 1 to 2 more years before we have to move on from Olbrich and he explores greener paths and he becomes a head coach in the NFL or seeks a different defensive coordinator job. But the coaching staff is not really my main focus right now. I'm looking and I look that we have a top 3 defense with Aaron Rodgers. Going back to the offensive coaching staff, though, I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers' offense, not Nathaniel Hackett's. I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers' offense. I think he's going to change these plays at the line of scrimmage, and he's going to be the commander in chief. He's going to be the signal caller. He's going to lead the offense. That's why I feel really confident about the Jets going into 2024. You have a Hall of Famer, and he only makes players around him better. That's my stance on the offensive coaching staff.
Yeah, good points. I know. For as much as I've hated Tom Brady, right, for the better part of 2 decades, I'm very interested to see him in the booth, right? There's been some interesting points he's made this offseason, which I think highlights the New York Jets' potential offensively when he's mentioned the quarterback position, right? At his heyday, when you looked around at the top guys, the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Bradys, the Drew Breeses, these guys were labeled not field managers but field generals, right? They were able to go out there, they had input into the offense. They can go out there and essentially run everything. The OC is more so there to handle emergency situations, right? A guy went down, how can we revamp this game plan around them, et cetera, et cetera. What do you feel about the improvements we made to the backup QB spot, right? Whether that's whether we don't see Tyrod Taylor until, let's say, we lock up a number 1 seed in the AFC and we're taking, some games out of Aaron Rodgers' hand to let him rest, or maybe he, gets a stinger, he goes out for a half or something. How do you feel about the improvements we made upgrading from Zach Wilson to Tyrod?
I've said it all along. I don't care if the Jets sign Tyron Smith. I don't care if the Jets sign Mike Williams. Signing Tyrod Taylor, in my opinion at least, was the best move that Jets general manager Joe Douglas made the whole offseason. The fact that I feel confident that if Aaron Rodgers has to miss 4 games because of a minor injury, Tyrod could go 2-2 or even 3-1. That's what I think is the biggest thing, because we did not feel confident when we lost Aaron Rodgers 4 plays into the season last year. And we knew that Zach Wilson had to take over from the second drive of the season all the way through week 18. So to feel comfortable with the quarterback too, I think is a huge thing. I think it's a big thing that you feel comfortable to have your quarterback two trot out at any time throughout the season. The Jets did not feel comfortable last season with, well, at least Jet fans did not feel comfortable with Zach Wilson last season. So the fact we can get someone who's reliable, like I said, if Aaron Rodgers missed 4 games this year, Tyrod, if he could even go 500, if we could just that just goes back to my whole point. Average offensive play could win the Jets the AFC East with a top 3 defense behind them. But going back to Tyrod, I think it's the best. I think it's the best signing Joe Douglas made all offseason to lock up that quarterback 2 spot. If Aaron Rodgers has another freak injury like we saw last year, we feel comfortable with a guy like Tyrod coming into the game.
Music to my ears. Yeah, I know. Me and Gunny, we were fiending over trying to get like a Jacoby Brissett the year prior. You know, the game plan for Zach Wilson sounded decent on paper, right? Allow him to sit back, develop. He has all the Famer in front of him, but the application of it just wasn't smart. It was one of those things where I think they put a bet out there that realistically they were never going to win. Talk to me about this draft class, though. It is an interesting one for most of us, doubling down at running back. The selection even of Malachi Corley, the Yak King, over some more traditional wide receivers that may be better in year one out the gate. But let's go down in order. Obviously, we have Olu Fashanu as our number one option there. He's learning behind a Hall of Famer. And one of the biggest benefits, I think, with him, and we just heard some of the area scouts and stuff speak to him that I seen a couple of days ago that talked about his positional versatility, even though we haven't seen it in action, but potentially being the number one option at every spot other than center. Was this your preferred pick? Did you have another favorite in round one that you would have chosen? Where are your thoughts at Olu?
Well, given the big board at pick 11, I think that was the best pick. I think that was the best available pick. And I know it wasn't a huge trade, but I think the Jets absolutely fleeced the Vikings in that one pick trade down. Like, the fact that we literally just got extra picks to assure the Jets were literally going to select the same exact player, because you knew the Vikings weren't going to take Fashanu, who the Jets probably had Fashion, however you say his name, who the Jets probably had number 1 on their board at the time. You knew they were going to take JJ McCarthy. So the Jets could, I think they recouped 2 picks for that. So it's like, okay, that's an absolute win. You know, I would have really liked to trade up for Odunze. I know offensive line is not the sexy pick, but it is the pick that, you know, it's the down and dirty that wins you and loses you football games. I mean, that is like the anchor of the offense. If you don't have a good offensive line, I don't care if Joe Montana was the quarterback for the Jets last season. Joe Montana in his prime, quarterback for the Jets last season, he would not have done anything given the offensive line play. So really, the whole offense revolves around the offensive line. So if you could get someone in there, learn from a guy like Tyron Smith, I think it's a great pick. Jets' third-round pick select Malachi Corley. You know, I don't dislike it. I think a third-round pick, I think he could be a solid developmental piece. Jets still have not signed Malachi Corley. I don't know if most of you guys know that, but Jets still have not signed Malachi Corley. It happened with Zach Wilson in his rookie year. They eventually get the deal done. I don't know what the holdup is for this time, though. I don't think he's going to get involved a ton in the offense in 2024. I think his goal should be to win the kickoff return man. I think that's what his goal should be. That's the way they're going to get involved. That's how they got Xavier Gibson involved in the offense. We really did not see Xavier Gibson in the offense until about week 4, after he had successful play returning kicks for the Jets. And then, you know, he kind of slowed down. It was average to below average play, I think, for Xavier Gibson returning the ball. And it's a lot of competition for the return spot. If Malachi Corley can battle and win that job, I think that sends a huge message to Robert Saleh and company that he's really eager to play. I just don't expect a ton. I don't expect a ton out of him. I think there's a scenario where we might see him as a healthy scratch for a couple games. I think that's just the reality. I don't think it's a negative thing. I just, like you said, he's going to be more of – there are more players that were year one ready than Malachi Corley. So I think the Jets are going to need to – and fans are going to need to look at him as a developmental piece. And it's not like we spent pick 10 on this guy and we're eager. It's a win-now piece. This is a third-round developmental type guy. So I think he's going to get eased into the system, which I think is a really good thing. So yeah, I like the Corley pick. In terms of doubling up on the running backs, it definitely sent a message to Izzy Abandokonda. It definitely sent a message to him that he is really going to have to work. And then also signing to Rick Cohen, which we'll probably might get into a little later. But that really sent a message to Izzy that there is competition. He's not just going to be handed that running back 2 spot. I think Braylon Allen is a unit. I think he's solid. The pass catching is what concerns me. I think I put a column out about it. I think he had 276 yards and he didn't get a touchdown in his career at Wisconsin. But big body, I like him. Isaiah Davis, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know a ton about him. I don't really know much about Isaiah Davis. All I know is that I think he will be the running back 3 from what I've seen so far. And then it will kind of be Izzy and Cohen battling it out for that running back 4 job, which I think eventually comes down to special teams. Doubling up on running backs, though, it doesn't bother me. I do like the Jets selecting Jordan Travis with their second 4th-round pick, though. He was a name that I had the Jets. I mean, I had him linked to the Jets since January. I really like him. Again, a guy you don't want to see right away, but a day 3 pick you hope could develop into something. So I don't really mind that. And then the Jets, they got some more pieces. But the main guys that I just listed, I think the Jets had a really solid overall draft. I'd give it around a B+. I'd give it a B+, a B, kind of that range for the Jets draft grade.
Yeah, one of the more interesting pieces to me, and maybe I'm out of the out of the circle on this one. I haven't heard Malachi Corley name come up a ton as a potential returner, whether that's in the kick return or punt return facet. So that's actually really exciting news to see that we have some people that's actually thinking about that being an option, right? His skill set, you would imagine, marries beautifully with the new rules that are going to be happening in the kickoff area. And to your point, I had the same idea. He's most likely going to be a healthy scratch. I know I've seen a ton of the AI projections for position groups and stuff, and like Malachi Corley's putting up almost 800 yards with us for 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's the third option. It didn't seem super realistic, especially if this emergence in the OTAs from Xavier Gibson is real, with the chemistry he's building with Aaron Rodgers and how he seemed to just, if it's a zone coverage play, he's decimating whoever's across from him. So I've been really, really hyped about that. From the UDFA perspective, though, we've a ton of good news this offseason. I think we get some every offseason. Is there a guy you're particularly excited about on either side of the ball?
There's 3 names that really catch my DK. The 2 on offense, 2 on defense actually that come to my brain. Eric Watts, defensive lineman. I mean, there's been a ton of talk about him. Rookie camp, OTAs, mandatory mini camp. There's been a lot of talk about him. And then Leonard Taylor out of the University of Miami. We never talked this guy was going to be a 3rd or 4th round pick. He fell undrafted. The Jets snagged him, which I really like. Then on the offensive line, I like Brady Latham out of Nebraska. I think he went to Nebraska. I definitely think he could. Arkansas, that's what it was. I think he could definitely earn a spot on the 53 man. He's gonna have to battle though. He is gonna have to battle. I think he might have he has a chance, I think, to beat out like a guy like Jake Hansen, who the Jets re-signed after last year. Who Jake Hansen, by the way, had a very sneaky end to the season last year. I thought Jake Hansen, when the Jets picked him up, he did great. But I think a guy like Latham has a chance to beat out a guy like Hansen again. Just a depth piece. Don't expect a ton out of him, given how Joe Douglas has beefed up this offensive line. But those are the main 3 that really catch my eye.
Fair play. Yeah, Brady Latham was a guy I was excited to break down. I know we brought in a few different Guys from a physical stature that are huge, and we would get excited about, kind of in that like Zach Kuntz territory, right? A guy that has a ton of physical traits you could love, but hasn't shown anything on the field necessarily as yet, right? For us, what do you think about this underrated tight end 3 battle? To me, though, Kenny Yeboah kind of having the leg up on a guy like Zach Kuntz and some of the other UDFAs we brought in.
We hear about Kenny Yeboah's OTA and minicamp performance every year. And where is he during the regular season? People are forgetting these are spring workouts. I think Kenny Yeboah is a solid player, and I do think he eventually beats out Kuntz. But the fact that people are already drawing that conclusion is crazy. We're still around a little less than a month away from training camp. I think rookies are set to report. Veterans are set to report on July 24th. I think rookies are around July 19th or so. So the fact that people are drawing conclusions, I think, is crazy. I think Kenny Yeboah, I do think he beats out Kuntz for one reason and one reason only: pass blocking. I think Kenny Yeboah, we could use him blocking and receiving. I think that's better than Kuntz. I think, and the same with the running back position, kind of. I think the reason Izzy didn't play that much last season was because of the pass blocking. And Nathaniel Hackett did not shy away from stating that several times. The reason he isn't playing is because of pass blocking. I do think it comes down to blocking, though, between Kuntz and Yeboah. Whoever makes the roster, though, I will tell you this: I do not expect a ton of receptions from them. I think all the receptions are going to be sprinkled between Ruckert and Conklin. People are also forgetting, I think Conklin, I'm the first to tell you Conklin's the most underrated player on the Jets. I think he's so solid, and Michael, I agree. I think Ruckert will have a big year. Here's the thing: people are forgetting. Aaron Rodgers does not really like to throw to his tight ends. He is more of a receiver guy. Zach Wilson throws to his tight ends way more than Aaron Rodgers does. Yes, he did it. Aaron Rodgers did have that crazy season where he made Robert Tonyan look like a Hall of Fame level player for about 5 weeks. But Aaron Rodgers likes to use his receivers the most. And then he doesn't really like to use let me take that back. He's made it clear if you're not performing, he's not going to give you the ball. We saw it for those who watched Hard Knocks last season. He is not going to give you the ball if you're not performing. So I just don't expect a ton, whoever wins it, Yeboah or Kuntz. I think they're both pretty equal. If I had to draw a conclusion today, though, I'd give it to Yeboah just based on what I've seen.
Yeah, agreed. And it's a good call out with Rodgers. A ton of people are missing that entire Rodgers history where, yes, he's had some standouts. But wholesale, largely, we know his game is to stay away from the middle of the field, find the weak matchup. And generally, he likes to attack the outside, right? The back shoulder throws, different things of that nature, which is why we've been so excited about that Garrett Wilson connection, right? Seems like he's been eviscerating everybody on defense. I mean, I've even seen some of the huge wins against Sauce Gardner, for example. Granted, he's won his share. There was something I noticed the other day, right, when we talked about the roster as a whole in the NFL. I've seen the wildest recent one from Pro Football Talk. Yeah, Mike Florio and his 25th ranking. That's whatever. But wholesalely, we've been generally top 5 from a roster perspective, right? I've seen the highest one with us being ranked just slightly higher than the 49ers. When I take a look at it, you can make an arguable point that we have 3 of the top duos across any roster, right? You have C.J. Mosley, you have Quincy Williams in the linebacker spot, you have Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed at the cornerback spot, and you can make the argument Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams if they have an entire full healthy season, right? Where are you at with the roster, right? We've heard some of the weak spots that you think we could still add talent to, but where would you put us on your scale of roster ranking?
I think you can make a case that the Jets have the best roster in the league. I think you can really make a case that the Jets have the best roster in the league. Though, on paper, they're solid, but the Jets are known champions of the offseason. That's what the Jets are every year. So they can't perform on the field. It's going to be what Jets fans throw it up and say it's another horrible offseason. But if they do perform, Joe Douglas is going to be the king of Jetland. And, Jet fan base will be going crazy how he's the best GM in the league despite his 27 and whatever record with the Jets. Just the roster, there are the positions like running back, safety, those in run blocking. But overall, I think the Jets have one of the most talented rosters, and Mike Clay of ESPN, who'll be coming on my show Tuesday, has not shied away from that. I think he had the Jets going some crazy prediction
Yeah,
earlier on. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he had them winning the Super Bowl, which I'm
yeah,
like, please speak it into existence. I love the Jets to win the Super Bowl, and it's good to see an NFL national guy who's not a Jet hater like Mike Florio, like you mentioned, that 25. I mean that my favorite after I was looking at the list, he had the Todd Bowles, Baker Mayfield, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers listed at number 9 on the list. I mean,
yeah.
it was just, and people aren't even realizing pre-camp. And Mike Florio, I've said it every podcast I've been on where I've talked about it. He's getting what he wants right now by people talking about it. He's getting what he wants, and he's like, okay, what could these fans do to me? Maybe if we make the playoffs and wins the AFC East, we could be like, oh, screw you, Mike Florio. You had the Jets ranked 25th on your power rankings in June before training camp had even started. So it's like that was clearly a clickbait piece. He got what he wanted. He got all those clicks. So I just try to not talk about it as much as I can because it's like it's just an absolute joke.
Yeah, some of the obvious factors in there, like the Broncos be in the bottom tier, right? And I think he had them a sizable portion ahead of us with that whole scenario. So definitely in the same boat. It's wild to think about what some guys are doing in the offseason when there's limited news, right?
Yep.
Along the lines of what you were saying with Mike Clay, though, because I do think he's one of the more objective guys for all 32 NFL teams when he's breaking down his stuff, because he's kind of like what's her name?
Cynthia Freeland.
Cynthia Freeland. Thank you. Exactly who I was thinking of. A lot of those more analytical based people, they're just giving their objective thoughts based on the numbers that they're seeing, right? And that randomization, I really have an appreciation for. So I know last year we had Super Bowl expectations as well, right? A vastly different looking roster. What do you think were the main gems that's causing a difference in opinion from the NFL as large as compared to last year?
Well, DK, I think the main factor is offensive line. If this offensive line can stay healthy, like I mentioned, we're looking at a top unit in the league. The Jets had the most offensive line combinations last year, I think at 13 or 14. They struggled to keep the same line. I mean, we even saw a Giants game where Xavier Newman came in to play center, where I think he proceeded to say after the game he hadn't taken a snap at center since high school. I mean, that Giants game, though, just looking back at that, I mean, that might have been one of the worst performances I've seen overall from the Jets. I mean, that was like a dog fight. Who could punt the ball the furthest? Who could kick the longest field goal? I mean, it was a special teams one game, but going back to what I think the main factor is, I really think it's offensive line. That's really the only reason I can point to, and quarterback play. Offensive line and quarterback play. Those are the two main factors. Other than that, I think the Jets defense is going to play eerily similar to what they did last season, a top unit in this league. Offensive line, quarterback, probably the worst the worst quarterback I've ever seen play football in about my 5 years of my Jets fandom, but the 12 years of my livelihood most likely. And the worst offensive line. The Jets have never had a good offensive line since I've been a Jet fan, at least. They just never have. But this offensive line was by far the worst the worst I've seen. So the fact they have massive upgrades, they upgraded from Zach Wilson, who is I think the biggest draft bust in Jets history. I mean, he was selected number 2 overall. Fans had aspirations of him being the next Joe Namath. I think some people might say Christian Hackenberg because he didn't play a snap with the Jets, but Zach Wilson got 3 years. So the fact of the matter is that he saw 3 years of play and still was incompetent in all 3 years. I think he's the biggest draft bust in Jets history. So you go from the biggest draft bust in Jets history to a Hall of Fame level quarterback, and then you go from a bottom 30 ranked offensive line to some could argue inside of the top 10. So it's like just massive upgrades on the offense overall. And with the Rodgers, I don't think Hackett really knew how to he hasn't coached as bad of a quarterback as Zach Wilson. So the fact that Rodgers is back, Rodgers essentially brought Hackett here. I think you're expecting a completely different offense than what we saw last season.
Yeah, one of the things that I had, obviously, I won't say obviously, he wasn't my desired OC, right? Out of some of the options that we could have pursued. It was the same offseason where we saw like Todd Monken go and some of these other guys shift around. But when I thought back to his Jaguar days, I'm like, you haven't had the best of the best either, right? You had a rookie, Blake Bortles. I think he had EJ Manuel around the time when he was with the Bills. So I'm like, you have some of these guys that may have had, a high projected value in the NFL that never got realized, but he was able to do some positive things with them. We haven't seen that yet, so we're hoping that gets turned around. But I think in the same token, a lot of fans, whether we win a Super Bowl or it's just a deep playoff run, whatever that looks like for us, I think a lot of the credit will still be assigned to Rodgers, and Hackett will still kind of be left out to dry as the guy that's just benefiting from a much improved team here. But kind of in thoughts of wrapping some things up. I know we've had a few different offseason rumors and stuff that have come up. Is there any lasting concerns that you still have in general, whether it's player contract issues? I know we talked about Corley, and I think most of his stuff really is just offset language in terms of if he doesn't get a second contract out of us. We have the Hassan Reddick holdout. Will he show up to training camp? What's kind of the final issues that you may have here before we get things going in about a month?
The Hassan Reddick thing, I'm not losing sleep over it. I do think the Jets eventually get something done where we guarantee some more money on his current deal. I don't want to make a huge extension where it hurts the cap even more, because people are forgetting a couple of years, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall, that draft class is going to get paid, and I've said it. I only think realistically 2 of the 4 will come back. Would I absolutely love all 4 of those guys to come back? Yes. Is it realistic? Not really. So we have to gear up for that. And that only hurts our chances of getting those guys if we have to ink a brand new extension with Hassan Reddick. And we've seen the comps. I mean, Danielle Hunter just signed a crazy deal. So I think that's what kind of Reddick might ask for. I think we just guarantee some money. He plays throughout the season, and we go from there. My biggest concerns, though, are what I mentioned, 2 position rooms, running back and safety. The safety room wasn't great last year. I mean, we saw Jordan Whitehead, who might be the worst tackler I've ever seen play with the Jets. I mean, he had the 3 interception game, but after that, the missed tackles that he had was insane. It was through the roof, the number of tackles that he could have had that were just missed. And the Jets didn't really – I wouldn't say – they re-signed Chuck Clark, who we didn't see. They didn't upgrade. I don't really think they upgraded they didn't upgrade this season. So you look at that, they probably stayed – around the same level they did by replacing Chuck Clark with Jordan Whitehead. I think Chuck Clark might be a little better than Jordan Whitehead, but then after that, the safety room is just full of question marks, and then same with the running back room after Breece Hall. So those are really my 2 main concerns, and then Reddick, I think, will get something done.
Yeah, I hear you. Which position group, by the way, would you end up investing the money in? Would it be safety or would it be running back?
Given the players that are available, it would be safety. I don't think there are a ton of good at this point, I think we've waited too long to add a veteran. All those names are off the market. We had our choice to do that during the offseason, post May, around May. There were still some names available. The Jets missed their window on that. So now you look at safety. They still have a very solid player available, Justin Simmons. He is going to cost money. But you add a really nice piece like him, and this Jet safety room goes from average to below average to above average. I mean, he could just change the whole dynamic of the room. So if I was to invest money in one of those position rooms, it would be safety for sure, just given who's available.
I'm sold. It's one I wanted to hold out from just because I'm still wary of potentially injuries creeping up in training camp. With these guys being vets, it wouldn't be too much of an issue if they have to come in 2-3 weeks before the season officially kicks off, pick up the playbook, get things going. But as our guy Connor here has mentioned, right, he has Mike Clay coming in on Tuesday. You guys are going to see him on Jets X Factor. He has his own YouTube channel as well, New York Flights Jets Talk. Connor, where else can everybody find you at?
Thanks, DK. Appreciate it. That's really it. At JetX Factor, you can download the app, JetX Mobile, Samsung, whatever, Google Play, App Store, whatever you guys have. JetXFactor.com. You could find everyone there just does such great work. It's really an awesome site for Jets content, so definitely recommend checking that out. NY Flight Jets Talk is my YouTube. We have daily discussions there. Try to get on anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week around that. We have interviews. We interview beat reporters, analysts. We take call-ins. We do everything there. And then at NY Flight Jets on Twitter, I post a little on there, not a ton. I do a lot of reposting of stuff, kind of spreading the news. But my two main are Jet X Factor and NY Flight Jets Talk, and then NY Flight Jets on Twitter. Thank you, DK, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's been a pleasure to chop it up with you, man. You obviously know your stuff. It's crazy seeing how consistently you can kind of throw a lot of these numbers and stuff out here. I have been curious, just a little preview of maybe what to expect with Jets X Factor. Are you going to, at least planning wise, do you think you'll be more along the lines of maybe a Robbie Sabo, where you'll be out there on the field at some point, checking out the players in real time? Are you looking at more of kind of the analytical side of things, or is this just kind of deeper conversation pieces for you?
Right now, if I'm being completely honest, I honestly don't know. I hope I could get the training camp. I've talked to some people with the Jets. I'm hoping I could be able to get credentialed for training camp. I really do hope so. But, I just started. It was a week from yesterday I started with Jet X Factor. So I only been there for a week. It feels like I've been there way longer, just how much I feel like I've accomplished so far in a week. But yeah, honestly, I really don't know. I started off, though, as a freelance writer. I've been writing a lot of stuff over there. I'm hoping be able to get out to training camp. DK, will you be at training camp?
It's been tough. I have a pretty consistent work schedule, the kids, and then a new baby on the way. So things have been tied up. The plan at some point, though, hopefully in the next year or two, will be to start flying out the kids with me and being able to check out training camp and stuff. So get them fully initiated into the Jets culture, if there.
What'd you say? I lost you there. You kind of cut out.
Got you. Yeah. The plan for me at some point, I'm going to start just having them fly out with me, get them fully initiated into the Jets culture, see things up front. It'll be cool for me because it'll be my first time actually being able to go to training camp, Austin activities and stuff like that too. So hopefully they get a good experience 2 to 3 years from now. We're perennial, playoff caliber teams, things of that nature. But guys, I got a couple minutes left here. If anybody has any questions or anything for Connor before we dip out of here, any thoughts that you guys want to know, let me know here. I know I've been keeping an eye on things. Things have been pretty consistent with what you've been mentioning here in the chat. As far as like the Reddick situation goes, some of the players. Oh, speaking of the draft class, what are your thoughts about Stiggers? Because some of the hype that I've been hearing around him, he's a guy I caught on to him pretty early. I think through the New York Jets Stock Exchange podcast. I think they might have mentioned the name. I know we wanted a backup guy to replace Bryce Hall, but I jumped on him pretty early, fell in love with him pretty early. He's a guy I'm excited to hear about, is building a lot of hype. What do you think? Because I've even heard, I don't remember if it was Jet Central, maybe Buffalo or somebody, Matt O'Leary, but they were mentioning there's kind of this Sauce Gardner level hype that they're hearing about Stiggers in the building.
Yeah, I'll tell you this right now. I don't think he's going to be a Sauce Gardner year one. I look at him, a 5th rounder, 6th rounder, I think wherever they got him. Just hope he could develop into something. The fact that there's this much hype around him already, I really like. But a 6th round pick, you just hope you could make something out of nothing, really. Think about it. Obviously, I mean, how do you not root for him given his story coming out of the CFL? I think he's solid. I haven't seen him play up front. Hopefully when I get out to training camp, whether it's credentialed or not, I'll be able to see all the hype around Stiggers. But, I think – again, he's not going to be a guy like kind of Sauce had to do in his rookie year and come in and be a cornerback one, be a Pro Bowl level player, be an all-pro level guy. He's going to get to learn from Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. He's going to get to ease into the system. I feel really confident already that there's this much hype around a day 3 draft pick.
Yeah, it's kind of unheard of. I was trying to think back to a lot of the last draft classes that we've had, and to be honest, I don't know if we've had anybody day three that's kind of taken the early portions of the offseason by storm. I mean, even going into a training camp, if we continue to hear his name consistently, I think it'll definitely be a standout and a plus for him. I've been thinking about on the scale of what his rookie season could look like. Maybe he finds a way to replace Eccles, right? Who's already
Yeah.
kind of in some in-house trouble, and we see him in some early packages along there with Sauce Gardner and MC2 in a rotation. If they want to things up with DJ Reed being a more right-oriented cornerback, so we'll see. I've been excited though. I think at some point we've heard positive news from this entire draft class, top to bottom. Davis, Braylon Allen, with their receiving ability, Stiggers with just his overall coverage and ability to adapt. So I'm excited. UDFA's draft class. We'll see if we continue to add to free agency. I know we're missing one spot right now with us releasing Tay Hayes with his offseason incident. 1 second, buddy. Do you think that we'll use that spot to maybe find a safety addition somewhere, or what do you kind of think about that last position?
Going in, I don't think that spot really means a ton. You look at a guy like Tay Hayes. I mean, he was elevated to the practice squad for that Eagles game. He recorded 2 tackles with the Jets. I think it's someone in the secondary for sure. The Jets will add someone in the secondary with that pick. I don't know if it'll be Justin Simmons, who I hope it is, or just another guy who they'll bring in and have play preseason and camp, quote, battle it out for the 53 and then not make the roster or make the roster and have little impact. But I'm hoping that could be Justin Simmons, extra body going into camp.
Yeah, anything's possible. We'll see how that plays out.
Yep.
But I appreciate everybody for coming through, chopping it up with us. Maybe next time we're able to bring Connor through, we'll make it more of a Q&A session for the chat. We'll obviously have more news to talk about with training camp and things kicking off, depending on whenever we link up again. But again, you can find his information in the details for this channel. Please go check him out and support him. We obviously have the next era of great Jets fans coming in. So we got to make sure we show him a good time, and hopefully he's on the high end of a positive Jets experience instead of what a lot of us have seen. But with that said, I will catch you guys again and appreciate you coming through.